Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Veterinary Business Podcast, your ultimate resource for developing a successful veterinary practice and career. I am Naren Arulrajah, the founder of the Veterinary Business Podcast and one of the co-hosts. On this podcast, we bring you insights and expertise from industry-leading doctors, experts, and thought leaders. We cover a wide range of topics, including practice management, marketing strategies, leadership development, HR best practices, and a lot more. Whether you are a practicing veterinary doctor, a practice owner, a practice manager, or a student studying to be a veterinarian, this podcast is tailored to help you navigate the unique challenges and opportunities in the business of veterinary medicine. Every listener of this podcast is welcome to visit the veterinarybusinessinstitute.com for additional resources and tools to support your growth. Remember to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or other popular podcast platforms. Today, I'm excited to talk to Dr. Mark Roozen, a veterinarian and a business advisor for many practices all across the US and the world. We are also proud to announce that he's joining hands with us as a co-host. So thank you, Dr. Roozen. Welcome to the Veterinary Business Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I sure do appreciate it. And I look forward to having some deep and meaningful relationships with the listeners and what we talk about.
100%. I have had the privilege to get to know you, and you have so much of wisdom and knowledge over the last 35 years, both as a veterinary practice owner, veterinarian, and of course, as a coach consultant who helps other practices, and helps them build their practices. The topic we're going to talk about today is journey through veterinary medicine through the eyes of a veterinarian. Journey through veterinary medicine through the eyes of a veterinarian. I think, Dr. Roozen, there's nobody better to talk about this than you because of your 35 years of experience. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation. So let me start by asking you my first question. Can you share your journey from being a veterinarian to becoming now international business advisor, and what inspired you to make this transition? So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, like most veterinarians out there, my journey started when I was a little kid. Almost chokes me up to think of the little cats and dogs we had as a family. And when one of those little kittens got sick, I was determined, I'm going to fix this in my future. And that was to become a veterinarian. So even though I was a little kid in elementary school, I already had my sights set on being a veterinarian. I had really no idea what it entailed, how hard it would be. Come to find out later, it was quite detailed and quite difficult. But I learned through experience working in middle school, working in high school for different veterinarians, doing the back end, cleaning cages, scoop and poop, as we call it, the super duper pooper scooper. That was me. So once I got to college, I knew that hard work was going to make the difference. And hard work, along with the passion of being a veterinarian, is what prompted me to go through vet school. Like every veterinarian out there, we all had to go through vet school. And the vet school experience is really can be a life-changing experience in many ways. But the success of graduating from vet school, getting my degree, getting my license was all I really wanted to do. But now I was faced with the next part. What are you going to do with a vet degree? Go save lives, or certainly try not to kill anything. So I went into practice. That's where I started my next step in this journey of veterinary medicine.
That's awesome. So how long have you been a coach consultant?
Well, the coaching started after I was in practice for about 20 years. I worked for several different practices, and then I opened up my own practice. And through that journey of being a practitioner and then being a practice owner, experience is amazing. It's what you grow with. You grow with the failures, you grow with the successes. So being a veterinary associate, then being a veterinary practice owner, that gave me the insight and the knowledge. And what I found was other veterinarians could use that insight and knowledge. So when I sold my practice, I decided to try to take my knowledge and my experience and help other veterinarians in their journey as well through the vet medicine pathway, either as an associate, which is what I do with my coaching, help veterinarians well established in their associate uh, area of expertise to do even better. And then more importantly, the ones that decide to go from being an associate to being an employee as a veterinarian to be a practice owner. That's a very difficult transition to make. And all the different places that I've worked and all the different businesses that I've owned, it's not easy. It's not easy to be a business owner. It's certainly not easy to be successful as a business owner while you're being a veterinarian. That's a very difficult combination.
Thank you, Doctor. What are some of the key lessons that you took out of your ownership and you managing your own veterinary clinic in Kentucky? And how did those lessons influence your approach as a business advisor?
One of the things that makes a good veterinarian is empathy. They're passionate, they're empathetic, and all of us that went through vet school realize that hard work comes with that empathy to be able to do what we want to do, which is to make sure pets are healthy, try to save lives where we can. And so that empathy is a certain part of the brain which doesn't always fit well with the other side of the brain, which is success in business. Business ownership and being empathetic as a veterinarian sometimes have a clash. And that's what I learned through being a business owner is that sometimes these things are opposing forces. You want to be empathetic, you want to save every animal. Almost every veterinarian that I've coached or consulted with will tell you they would do it for free if they could, but you can't. You have to make some money. You have to be able to survive. You have to pay your bills. And that conflict is what I try to get people to learn through this bridge of being an empathetic veterinarian to being a successful business person. And those are the experiences I bring to the table as a consultant to try to get them to understand how that bridge can be crossed without really compromising your empathetic passion and at the same time being successful enough to have a lifetime career in veterinary medicine.
That makes sense. So you have to mix empathy with, business savvy or business knowledge. And then, of course, like you said, make profit at the same time, take care of your pets like they were your own.
That's pretty much the root of it. You had this conflict, and being in business is insightful as far as you need to have excellent communication skills. You have to be able to talk to not only the pet parents, but as the business owner, you have to be able to talk to your employees, your associates. So these emotional, intelligent communication skills are critical for both sides. So that truly is the bridge between being an empathetic veterinarian and a successful business person is the ability to communicate successfully, to try to establish some line of lack of a better term, just simply communication to get things done. Because not everybody has the same goals that you have as a business owner. So when you're in a practice and you have, let's say, anywhere from one employee to 100 employees, you have to be the expert as far as guiding these people that are part of your success. In order to do that, you have to learn. As we know in veterinary medicine, education is key. Once you become a veterinarian, your education doesn't stop. It continues through your whole career. And so hopefully, as a coach and a consultant, I can help you with the other side to try to get you to understand the business practices that are efficient, effective, the things that can help you get through the day without all the extra headaches of the unknown.
Absolutely. Can you highlight some common challenges that young veterinary doctors face when they start their clinic for the first time? And what tips or advice would you have for them to overcome those hurdles?
Once again, coming back to the basic ideology of a veterinarian to be empathetic and passionate. The idea that veterinarians would do what they do probably for free just because they love what they do. Now switch that over to the business side. And for the new veterinarian that opens their own practice, the independent veterinarian, the biggest first hurdle is profit. What is profit? How do you make profit? And is profit bad? In order for you to open the doors, in order for you to turn the lights on, there has to be money. You can be independently wealthy and open up your own practice and not charge for a vaccination or surgery, but that doesn't happen very often, if at all. So the conflict that veterinarians have is it's okay to be profitable. It's okay to make money. It's okay to charge for what we do. And sometimes that conflict is the first step in owning your own practice. How do you charge for what you do? What is your time worth? Can you spend all day for a $5 nail trim? It's happened. A lot of veterinarians do. They spend a lot of time and don't get paid for it. Do you love what you do? Sure. Will it keep the doors open? Probably not. So that's really the first step, is that level of profitability. And then the next thing is trust. Veterinarians tend to trust a lot of people when they're coming out of vet school. They trust the world. But in business, not everybody has the same idea of what is good and what is bad. I've had clients in the past that when I was a veterinarian, they would let me do anything I wanted, knowing that they weren't going to pay me a single dime. And you can't survive that way. You might want to fix an animal for free, and the clients will let you do it, but you can't. Your employees don't work for free. You don't work for free. And so being able to establish that cash flow, that's a new term for most independent veterinarians. What is cash flow? And how does cash flow affect your business insight and affect your efficiency? So these are the things that new veterinarians that venture into independent ownership need to be aware of.
That's brilliant. So these are skills they have to develop. They have to get used to and master if they want to be successful. Now, you also have worked with established practices. What are some of the common growth opportunities or strategies that you see when you work with these types of established practices?
Well, let's go back and just look at the journey that veterinarians take. They work real hard in college to get into vet school. That's their goal, get into vet school. So once you get into vet school, you work real hard, and then you get out of vet school. Then once you get out of vet school, you want to use what you've learned. So typically when you get out of vet school, you get a job as an associate. Then you start practicing what you've learned in vet school. Then the next stage is, well, maybe I should own a business. So you open up your own independent practice. You own a business now. You've learned the insides and outsides of business. But what's the next stage in that journey? The next stage is, well, where do I go from here? What happens when my business is successful? What happens when I want to retire? So this is just another stage of that journey. These well-established veterinarians, when you talk to some of them, they already have it clear in their mind. They're just going to work for the rest of their lives. And that's not necessarily a journey strategy for most young independent veterinary practice. So these established veterinarians have to figure out, how do they get out of the practice? How do they leave the independence of business ownership? These exit strategies are what we talk about. We try to define, how are you going to sell your practice? How are you going to retire? And what would you do when you retire? One of the first things that I go through when I do my consulting, I'll do an on-site consultation. I'll be in a practice for 3 or 4 days, talk to the staff, talk to the veterinarian. But the very first step is to talk to the business owner and try to figure out, how you're going to get out. What do you have in your mind for your exit strategy? So these established veterinarians have done a lot of good things. They had a successful career as an associate. They have a successful career as a business owner, but they're stuck. They don't know what to do. So they tend to just keep working without really any plan on how to sell their business or how to go sit on the beach. And so that's the first step in this consultation process, is let's decide, what do you want to do? Do you want to practice until you're 80? That's okay, if that's what you decided to do. But most people would like to just kick back a little bit and retire when they want to. And that's really what our focus is for these established veterinarians.
Thank you, Doctor. Given the competitive nature of the veterinary industry today, how do you suggest veterinarians kind of differentiate themselves? And how do you suggest they build a strong brand within their communities?
Well, unfortunately, I think veterinary medicine is going through a very strange transition. There seems to be these opposing forces. Do we have a shortage of veterinarians, or will we have an abundance of veterinarians? So basic economics, it's supply and demand. So right now, veterinarians don't seem to be too focused on personal branding or their own style and technique because the demand is so high and the supply of veterinarians is really not keeping up with that demand at this point. So what happens is as the supply of veterinarians increases, as more vet schools open, as more young veterinarians enter the market, then it's even going to become more important for the individual veterinarian to have their own personal style, their own personal brand, to learn where they've come from, to basically, if they have a failure, learn from it and get better. But with the end result, have your own personal comfort level with who you are, why you're here, and what do you want to do. And these are the things that when there's a big uh, lack or supply problem with veterinarians and demand is high, then we tend to be a little slack in developing our own style, especially as associates. And then even as a veterinary practice owner, as a vet practice, this supply and demand, we're so busy. Sometimes that's going to come around and not be very friendly on the other side when you've neglected the marketing, you've neglected the website, you've neglected that brand, that business culture, and then you decide, well, now I have to catch up. And that's a little bit more difficult. Always easier to start out with an idea as an associate. This is what I want to do when I own my practice. Make a list, start planning ahead. When you decide to open up your own practice, then you already have an idea of what you want to do and how you want to do it. The business stuff we can work on. We can learn the business technique, we can learn the business effectiveness, we can learn the efficiency. But that veterinarian has to establish that culture of communication, that culture of empathy, and the culture of, on the business side, that culture of profit. And those are the things that will endure the supply and demand imbalance through time as a business owner.
Thank you, Doctor. So yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And that personal brand you talked about and paying attention to like how do patients find me and choose me, I think it's really critical. And being very thoughtful and like you said, you have to work on it. You can't ignore it or not work on it and then expect it to do well. If you do ignore it, then it's going to decline and you're going to suffer. So let me ask a different question. What role does effective clinic management play in the success of veterinary practices? And do you have any suggestions, best practices with regards to, how to run an efficient practice?
One of the things that a privately owned practice faces almost every day. I am a veterinarian. I just want to practice veterinary medicine. I hear that every day. Well, unfortunately, if you're the business owner, then you also have to be a business person. You have to know the business. You can't always relinquish all your business decisions to the management. You've hired a practice manager, you've hired a bookkeeper, you've hired people to do the functional parts of the business, but you have to set the tone. You have to be the one that knows what they need to do. What numbers do you need? What data do you need? These are the things that business owners try to push off to the management of the clinic. And we see this in the corporate world. The corporations tend to have a practice manager or someone that's in management that runs the clinic. And the veterinarians are getting what they wanted, which I just want to be a veterinarian and just practice veterinary medicine. But the conflict comes up with management versus the veterinarian. And a private practice, business and management is the same person. That's that veterinary owner. And so, in order to be successful, you need help. Some practices can do it on their own, but most every successful veterinary practice has employees. So they'll have a layer of management. Typically, it's somebody who was started out in high school They worked in the vet practice all through high school, and they stuck around as a vet tech, and then they graduated up to being the business manager. That sometimes will work. In many cases, it does work, but it may not be the best path to take. Sometimes you need true management to come in that has an experience with HR, with front end, whether it's the website, whether it's the reception work. These are all areas that the veterinarian sometimes ignores or sometimes doesn't realize how important they are. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depends on how you look at it, probably the most important person in that clinic is the one that answers the phone and receives the customer as they walk in the door. But almost every clinic that I go to, that's also the person that just started Wednesday. They just got there. They're 3 days into the business. They used to work in a bank and now they're the receptionist. And sometimes that doesn't work out because the customer wants that likability, they want that trust, and they want you to be the expert. And if the receptionist doesn't give that impression, like you've pointed out, likability, that's important. Trust, absolutely. But the expert, that's a little bit tricky. And if they can't seem to get the computer to work, then you may not be the expert that they think you are, even though it has nothing to do with how you do surgery or how you fix patients. It's tough out there.
100%. And I think the famous quote, right? It's all about perceptions more than reality. So what people perceive is sometimes more important than how good you are, because if they don't realize it, then it doesn't make any difference to anybody. And I do agree the person answering the phone is such a critical part of this, this team, because I have listened to hundreds of calls, and many times, like many practices don't even convert 30% of the new patient calls that are coming in because they're not trained. They don't know how to build trust, how to get the patient to like them, and nobody's monitoring it. Because nobody's monitoring it, nobody's trying to improve it. So it's like, imagine having a kid in a school, but he or she never gets grades. Like, can he do better? No, probably not, because there's no idea where he even stands. So some basic things that many practices unfortunately don't do, that hurts them a lot. With your background in both medicine and business, how do you strike that balance between providing top-notch veterinary care versus maintaining a profitable practice?
Most of it's about awareness. We learn as veterinarians to pay attention to the physical exam. You look at the animal, you feel the animal, you touch the animal, you take that outward knowledge and you put it to what you know inside. What did I learn in vet school? The leg is sore, the dog is limping, the cat is crying. These are things that give you an indication that maybe things are just not right. Well, the same thing applies to veterinary business. In the MBA program that I went through, a lot of it's about learning the language. You learn the language of business. Well, we learn the language of veterinary medicine through vet school. Learning the language of business allows you to talk to other business owners on a common level so that we know, what are you talking about? Is your profitability high? Is your margin low? These are things that inherently as a business owner, you just have to know. It's awareness. Not any different than doing the physical exam on the dog. Do the physical exam on your business. As an associate, you have the joy of not worrying about how the business is run. As a practice owner, whether the floors are clean and the windows are clean and whether or not you're charging enough for a vaccine, all happen on the same day. So you have to be aware of where you stand. Using those data points like you described, knowing what you did yesterday compared to what you're doing today, these are all critical to the things that make you successful.
Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate it. Last question. Finally, could you tell us about a rewarding or challenging experience you've had as a business advisor and how it impacted the veterinarians you were working with?
Well, one of the things in my practice, I had a mixed animal practice, large animals and small animals. And if you ever really want to know about the economy of business, then be a veterinarian on a cattle farm, because it all comes down to the money. Is that cow worth saving or is it worth treating? So you have to make these decisions as a business owner and as a veterinarian. I can save this cow, but it's going to cost this amount of money. And so if you don't match the the money versus the treatment, then you can't make it. I mean, if you spend $1,000 on a $200 cow, well, that's not profitable. And that happened in my practice. I'd go out to the farm, look at the cow, and be honest with the farmer. Say, I can fix this cow, but it's going to cost $1,000. And the cattle farmer would say, well, if you fix it for 1,000 and I can only sell it for 200, then that's not going to make any sense. So typically then you have to put the animal to sleep. And so in business, that's what you have to do. You take these business decisions and you have to, do I need 5 employees when 3 employees can do it? I had a practice with just 1 technician, quite successful. Then I grew and added more technicians. And these are the things that you take forward when you open your own practice. Do I need 1 tech, 5 techs? Do I need an associate? And those are the things that I learned through a small practice in a small town. If I can make it in a small town that has 400 people, then I can give you some insight on how things work.
Thank you. If someone is interested in getting to know you, doctor, or even like contacting you, how can they go about doing that?
Probably the easiest way is on my LinkedIn account, Dr. Roozen, Dr. Mark Roozen on LinkedIn. And that way we can message each other and talk about how I can help you be successful.
Absolutely. We'll include your LinkedIn on the show notes so people can find you, doctor. Thank you so much for your insights. Definitely, you have so much experience and wisdom. And I think, unfortunately, there's 2 ways to learn. One is to make mistakes, and sometimes they can be very, very, very costly. Like I know people made $100,000 mistakes. And the other way is to find someone who has the experience, I guess, the power of experience and wisdom, like you who has helped practices for 35 years, of course, first with your own practice and then practices owned by others. So I think someone like you would really make a big difference in the lives of practice owners. So thank you for your wisdom today. Thank you for your insights today. I also want to take a minute to thank all of our listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you. We cannot do what we do without you. If you like the podcast, please share it with your colleagues and friends on social media. Also, don't forget to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews will help other doctors and practice owners find us. Until we meet next time, keep striving for excellence and making a positive impact in the lives of your patients and, of course, pet parents. Wishing all of you an amazing week ahead.